Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Insignificant Stoic. This video is part 3 of the Prologue Zeno of Citium as part of my History of Stoicism series. Before we start, I'd like to make an apology to all the professors, PhDs, and intellectual sorts out there. For my last video, I ragged on you guys pretty hard, but there is an intention behind that. I wanted to show what Zeno would think of credentials and intellectualism. So if that offended you, well, don't take me seriously. But if you figured it out, congratulations. Moving on, this video is about Zeno and his time as a cynic and his departure, and cynicism's influence on Stoicism. I've been rather hard on cynicism in my last couple of videos, but it's not entirely unfounded. There were moderate cynics and there were extreme cynics. One of the most extreme would pleasure himself in the marketplace in front of everyone. They had a habit of practicing self-deprecation in order to teach themselves humility. But that was a training that was supposed to work two ways. It taught the practitioner of cynicism humility, but at the same time it was supposed to teach society by their example of the futility of the superfluousness of life. In other words, vanity in fashion, losing oneself in the theater, chasing after money, constant sexual gratification, even gluttony, or the building of nice homes and the wearing of nice clothes. The cynics had a job to teach themselves the virtues, but also to teach everybody else the virtues. And they had a very peculiar way of doing it. Zeno, when he came to Athens, put himself under the tutelage of Crates, the cynic. There's a story in Diogenes Laertius where Crates has Zeno carry a pot of lentils or porridge through, I think, a cemetery or something, and Crates took a staff and broke the jar, and the lentils ran down Zeno's legs, and he ran away embarrassed. This was supposed to teach Zeno humility. Zeno was a modest man. He didn't like vanity. He preached against it. He didn't like conceit. He wasn't into nice clothing, fancy language, beautiful homes, getting lots of attention. Either as a peculiarity of him or something else. He would sit on one end of a bench because he didn't like to have one person on both sides, or a person on each side of him. He didn't like large crowds. When he would teach in the Stoa, if too many people came up, he would start charging. Well, the Athenians at that time didn't like the part with their brass, so once he starts trying to collect coin, the crowd starts shrinking. Now, was that out of modesty? Was that out of some sort of bashfulness? Modesty? Don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. But since Diogenes Laertius says explicitly that he was a modest man, one could see how the extreme deprecation and the weird way of poking fingers at society wouldn't settle with him. It was too much. And so ultimately, Zeno left cynicism. He went under a few philosophers before he actually developed Stoicism. But the important thing from what we've learned so far is that his modesty did indeed have effect on what became Stoicism. His modesty was, or influenced, what can be seen as Stoicism's reaction against the extremeness of cynicism. So this personal characteristic of modesty in Zeno, when he was developing his own philosophy, accepted the idea of practicing the virtues, escaping the superfluousness of life, and focusing on the real value, was inspired by his modesty. So we can look at Stoicism in the beginning, just in the beginning, as sort of a modest man's reaction against the extremeness of cynicism. That's just one way of looking at it. Now, that's the end of this video, and this will also be the end of my prologue of Zeno of Citium. There are a bunch of philosophers that come after him. Chrysippus for one, Rufus is another. We also have eventually Seneca that we know about, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius. I'm not sure where we're going to go next in the history series, but I would like to start discussing the actual principles of Stoicism, not in its early sense, but in its most developed. Once we do that, we'll be able to understand Epictetus, we'll understand Seneca and Marcus Aurelius more clearly. So for now, this is going to be the end of the historical series, and next we'll be going into the actual doctrine of developed Stoicism. So also, if you have any requests of anything, if you happen to know anything about Stoicism, if you would like me to address anything, or like my take on it, research, whatever, let me know, and I will do my best to accommodate. Have a great day.